your butts.
So, Professor Candida Moss, super glad to get to talk to you. Huge fan of this book.
Thank you.
Yeah. Everyone who's watching, get this book. It's
so good.
Very good stuff. I love it so much.
Thank you so much. And I just want to say to Lang, who put a question in the chat, yes, I will make some videos on women in the Bible. I actually have a column this week on God's sex workers, so we'll stop there.
All right.
It probably wasn't who you meant when you said women in the Bible, but you know.
Well, I was commenting. I recorded my podcast today, and we actually talked about, because it's so topical, we covered abortion in the Bible.
Oh God!
And one of the things that I pointed out was there was a comment that my co-host made about how the agency of women doesn't seem to really play much of a role in parts of the Bible, and I commented
does
that
it seem to?
Yeah,
no, it does not.
Yeah,
well, period.
The places where the agency of women is the most salient is where they're exercising their sexual agency to try to overcome systemic power asymmetries and kind of manipulating the system to serve their own needs and interests. But yeah, other than that, they rarely have, their agency is usually subordinated if it's even addressed at all. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that column. That should be great.
Yeah, I'm excited. You know, it's nice because I usually get like a nice healthy swathe of hate mail after I publish something like that.
Oh yeah.
And that, like, it keeps me young, you know, the death threats from Christians, you know. So
yep.
That's nice.
Let's see. Getting a lot of questions in here. My understanding is we don't all see the same thing. Is that? I'm not as familiar with live. Jessica, you seem to have frozen. There you go.
Sorry, I know I was frozen. I was trying to figure out how to add Steven in here,
okay.
And I'm not sure that I can, even though it says I can. But anyway, we don't all see the same things for sure. So yeah. Can we do this? Let's start with this. Bestie, love of my life, Professor Dr. Moss, can you please give everyone a brief introduction, since I make the rules and I said we were going to do this?
Give everyone who, like, an introduction to me, to like...
Yes, correct. To you, to what you do, just like, I don't know, whatever you want. Just so, I assume everybody knows who you are, but if they don't, what should they know about you?
No, I definitely feel I'm like the little kid who gets to sit at the grown-up table in this live hangout. So hi everyone. I'm
so sorry. What are you talking about?
Yeah, listen, I'm the child here. What do you
like, I'm sorry, look, who are you talking to? Like, I'm sorry, in what universe are you at the children's table and I'm like
in the world of
I have a bib on and
in the world of social media giants. I'm Candida Moss. I am the Edward Cadbury Professor of Theology at the University of Birmingham. Hilarious title. I don't do theology. I write books about early Christianity in the New Testament. I'm best known for my work on martyrdom and persecution. That's the book that makes people hate me. I also wrote a book about the Green family, the owners of Hobby Lobby, and their antiquities trafficking. Kind of unpopular for that one too.
We're all
you know, I have a new trade book coming out in March on enslaved literate workers and the New Testament, and its writing and who actually wrote the Bible. And yeah, I make documentaries and I do papal news commentary for CBS News. That's it. That's me.
Just a super child.
No big deal.
Interesting. So I'm so sorry, Steven. I really don't know how to add you. I keep trying. It's not working for me.
Separate. There's like a whole nother like feature where you can. There's like 4 versus like 20 people you can bring on, and you can only select.
Yeah. So like I don't know either. I looked it up. It was like, oh, you can invite whoever. You can have kind of as many people as you want, but I just can't find the button.
So often, it's so hard.
And I'm just like wasting time, I think, at this moment. And I'm really sorry. Because I really think what he has to say is important, but I just can't figure out how to get him here. So I tried.
Stephen sent me a message saying, hey, please don't stay hung up on this. So that's your permission to stop trying.
Okay, great.
Dr. Moss, at some point, I would love to get your thoughts on the recent P5575 manuscript.
Yeah.
To talk about that.
Absolutely.
I've been reading about that for the past 3 days.
So I got it early. It was interesting for me to be able to talk to people, because one of the things that I saw the announcement in Bloomberg on the Bloomsbury website, and so I emailed Dr. Gonis and I said, hey, can I get an advance copy? So I've seen it. I've seen the pictures. So, real
quick before you get into the weeds.
Hold on. Sorry, I love y'all so much. But the next 15 minutes are dedicated to catching up. And then we're answering questions.
Okay.
Sorry. We set the, I set the parameters.
I got excited. I'm sorry.
No. You didn't know, and it's not your fault, and it's fine. I want to talk about it, but I want to hear about what's been happening. You just went to Italy. What's happening in Dan's life? What's happening in your life, Captain Dadpool? And then let's get into the questions, because otherwise we will not catch up, and I would like to catch up. So tell me more, How was Italy? How's life going?
It was good. Italy was good. Saw a bunch of ancient stuff, made everyone who was traveling with me a little angry about that.
Yeah, because people told them the Colosseum didn't exist when this alleged Christian martyrdom took place, right? Yeah.
I'm going to say that we were in Sicily on a tour, and we're in Palermo, and the tour guide is here is a 2nd century Christian house. And I'm my arm is up. I'm 2nd century. I was how do you know that? He's from the chronology. I'm no.
No.
I
need to travel Europe with you, because we would just be fighty the entire time.
He's look, there are fishes in the mosaic. And I'm yeah. There are fish in a lot of mosaics, a lot of Roman mosaics. I'm obnoxious on tours. It was great.
Have to go.
The food wasn't as good as I expected it to be. I know, hate me, everyone. I know. I think I'm not a huge ricotta fan. And I just couldn't get a great spaghetti trapanese, which is what I wanted. But I did eat a lot of really good pizza. I'm just going to say that. So it was great. And now I'm in copy editing hell. Truly. And someone else should talk, because I feel like I've already spoken too much.
You haven't, but someone said catacombs with 5 question marks. And I love this, because also I thought that as a Christian.
I think my favorite comment that I've seen so far is, who are the 2 people on the left? But that's a great question. Who are we?
I don't even know who is on the left, because
who's on the left?
Who's on the left for me
is you and me.
Candida and I are on my left. I don't know. It's probably different for everybody.
Sorry, who's on the left for you?
I'm in the upper left of my screen. Candida's in the lower left.
So on my left, it's me and Candida, but
yeah, that's what I have.
All right. Anyway,
your mom's on the left. Next. Sorry.
So Candida introduced herself, for if somebody's wondering who Candida is. And I can talk about what's going on in my life, because I just announced today. Well, I announced it 2 days ago on other social media, but I made a video today announcing that I just signed a contract for a new book. That will be a trade volume, so not an academic book, but something written for a general audience.
Let's see it, a memoir, if I remember.
Well, my agent was you got to have either Data or Dogma, or all right, let's see it somewhere in the subtitle. So
it is. Y'all, if you need a one-line banger, just let me know. It's my talent in life. That's all. Thank you.
So currently,
is this your own book, or are you contributing to a larger work?
No, this is my own book.
Oh,
so sorry. It'll basically be the greatest hits of my my social media content. So it's the title that I proposed was the Bible says so, putting data over dogma regarding what is or is not in the scriptures, something like that. I don't know. It'll be related to that, unless the publishers decide they know better than me, which they very well do. But it will, there'll be chapter on like inerrancy and univocality, and another one on homosexuality in the Bible, and is hell in the Bible, and is Satan in the Bible, and is Jesus God in the New Testament, and all that fun stuff. So I want to tag every base that infuriates somebody out there about the Bible. So the publisher is very excited. They even had to be like in the contract. It was like, if anybody gets in legal trouble for any of this, like for some reason that somebody's nervous about me angering the wrong people, but
anger everyone. That's my motto.
It'll sell more books.
Literally everyone off. Yeah. I mean, anyway, that's my personal opinion. Piss everyone off.
And I am people are asking if there'll be an audio book. That's the plan. I would love to record it, but that has not been. I haven't seen anything in writing yet about that. So that'll be available. And yes, there will be a promotional tour, a signing tour, and that kind of stuff. So
please visit the University of Chicago.
Please come to Pennsylvania.
I don't know where all
stay with me in New York.
I would be happy to stay.
Also, you come to Chicago for to do a talk or literally anything. Just come over here so I can hang out with you. Please.
Well, talk to Jeffrey about getting me out there to talk in a class or something like that. I'm getting invitations to go. I'm going to a liberal arts college in Michigan next month. I'm going to be visiting Kansas Washburn in near Topeka a few months after that. I'm going to be visiting a bunch of campuses. So
I'm not saying that Jeffrey Stackert likes me, but he definitely did let me into the school and approve my funding. That's all I'm going to say,
Well, I don't know how Jeffrey Stackert feels about me. He edited my book, so he probably is not a huge fan.
I asked him. That was the first thing I asked him. How do you really feel about Dan's book?
And he just laughed and said, anyway, moving on.
No, he didn't. He didn't. He actually said it was very good, and obviously he approved and loved it, and etc. And I was like, it was super dense. And he was like, yeah, agreed, it is super dense, but that's Dan. And I was like, yeah, not like you're dense, but like the stuff that you read about, or the way you read it, even though you dumbed it down for the rest of us from your thesis, was dense. It was dense.
Well,
read his book. It's dense.
Really was.
If you look at Stackert's book on the Pentateuch, his edited volume, that's the densest stuff there is. It does not get
it did
denser.
feel very pot calling the kettle black.
He didn't mean it in a bad way. I read it, and I knew this was for the general population, and when I read it, I was like, I need to reread this about 12 times. And I think I'm a fairly smart person, so not a genius by any stretch, but someone that probably digests information a little bit better than the average person. And I was still just rereading, So
I could have done a lot better, but the dissertation was twice as long, and the readers were like, hey, you probably need to take it down a couple of steps well, I'm just verbose. Somebody just asked said they heard that Miriam Ansevin was going to be, so DOF Reactions was going to be on the podcast soon, and that is 100% true.
Before which is pretty, honestly. Before Candida, which is also a lot. Can you explain?
That's we're getting to that. We're getting to that. The schedules have to line up is the issue. This is a very busy couple of months. So, but yes, we're going to have Candida on there as well. We want. My understanding was that we're going to have you on there as well. But we wanted to give you an opportunity to get into your coursework and have something fun to.
Sorry. Go.
But Candida, I was understanding that we were going to wait until the book was a little closer so that it would align with your promotional efforts.
Yeah, I definitely want to do your podcast first, and I'm not allowed to talk about the book until the new year for sure.
Okay.
They'll be a little annoyed, but
yes,
you know,
I imagine.
then I will bore everyone by talking about it nonstop for several months.
Yes. Oh, I'm going to be insufferable when my book is ready for pre-order. I'm just going to be the worst.
Nothing to pre-order, and I'm already insufferable. It's kind of my brand, if I'm being honest.
I'm already Googling it and bookmarking it.
Oh. So for everyone, sorry, I know we're not all seeing the same thing. So for everyone, at least in my comments, that are asking about Dan's book, his book, and I'm going to let Dan tell you about it, I think, is about cognitive science and the way deity is perceived in the Hebrew Bible. Is that right or wrong?
Yes. So it's called Adonai's Divine Images, A Cognitive Approach. This is an open access book. You can go find a PDF freely accessible of this book on my Linktree, or just Google it and you can find a PDF. All the illustrations are mine. I drew them myself. But it is, yes, I'm applying cognitive linguistics and the cognitive science of religion to an interrogation of what deity was understood to be in the Hebrew Bible, and then also divine images. What were they? And then I talk about how
fascinating. Just FYI, it is fascinating.
I think so.
It is.
My wife, it bores her to tears, but I think it's fascinating.
I can't speak for your wife. I can only speak for me. But like, I will tell people that you'll probably have to spend some time kind of rereading it, but it is fascinating. Just
so I have a lot of notes on Dr. McLellan's book, as you can see. Highlighted, color coordinated.
I'm pretty sure we share the same like Google Doc. We don't, but it looks the same.
Highly recommend, very good stuff. There it is. Okay.
And for those of anybody who knows about the Society of Biblical Literature, the weekend before Thanksgiving is the big annual meeting where they have 10,000 biblical scholars who descend upon the convention center and the hotels of a big city. It's in San Antonio this year, but there'll be a review panel on my book. So some big hitters this year will be reviewing my book. In fact, I am embarrassed to say that
please, babe, please
find the money for it.
Come on.
Let me.
Stephen, SOY Prof, was asking me if I'm going to go to SBL this year, and I just decided that I am right now in this moment.
Right.
There you go.
Sounds like so much fun.
Let me see if I can. I don't remember who all is on the panel, but give me a moment and I'll pull up their names. When my like busy work song in my head is Elmo's World. In case anybody. Elmo's
My
World.
favorite thing about going live with Dan, sorry, let me just say this, is the amount of heads that explode when they realize that Dan and I are friends. That's all. The absolute chaos that erupts mentions after this.
Yeah.
Love it.
Okay, so Susan Ackerman, Esther Hamori, Yitzhak Feder, and shoot, who the fourth one is. And I want to say Saul Olyan is the fourth, but I've got to. That's Esther.
You're gonna start drinking for this?
It's gonna be
at least
yes,
two of
Saul,
those people are super nice.
No, I'm sure.
Yes, Saul is the fourth. So, and then also Saul and I are organizing a conference for next May on monotheism and how it's not in the Bible.
Yes.
So,
oh my God, I'm drawing a blank. And he helped me with my applications. Jesus, what is his name? He's at Brown. I can't believe I'm forgetting his name. He's one of my friends.
Is Arch.
Well, a fun conference. Yes, and actually Stephen, who did not get to join us, is one of the presenters in the conference. So Stephen Young will be one of the presenters, along with
Who is it at Brown? He is.
I will drop out if we can get him in here.
Is Robin?
Robin is Robin Faith Walsh is in the conference. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
You
Paula
mean
Friedrichsen.
It's a lot of
is,
Brown
hold on,
people.
hold
By
on.
which I mean people
You mean the
who went
author
to
of this
Brown.
book right here?
Yes.
None of them.
Yes.
He is a man
This
who
one?
works at the writing center. He's ABD. He is not.
Josiah?
Yes, Josiah. Oh my God, I can't believe I forgot his name. Like, he is one of my friends, and I just totally shit the bed, and I'm so embarrassed. I hope he's not watching this ever. He's been telling me about this for a while, and I was like, can I please come? Not that anyone could ever stop me, but, like, I'm excited for that. That's all. Thanks.
Yeah,
Sorry.
and it's. Let me see. I can pull up. Okay, so Deborah Scoggins Ballantyne, Jennifer Singletary, moi, Paula Friedrichsen, Emma Wasserman, David Burnett, Robin Walsh, Stephen Young, and Josiah Bisbee are our presenters. So
I know like 3 of those people, but that's really cool.
Yeah,
was like instrumental in my application process for grad school. Like, so listen, Dan wrote one of my letters of recommendation. I have no idea what he said, but apparently it was good. You know, that's fine. Whatever. I got into where I wanted to go, so whatever you said worked for me. And but Josiah helped me like craft my personal statement and like all of that. So
awesome.
Super sorry, Josiah. Also,
There's
if you fucking undercut me, I will find you. Thanks to the thing, so it's fine. It's fine. Whatever.
There was something that gets posted on Twitter every now and then, and I forget exactly where it came from, who said it, but someone said as soon as they got into academia and got their degree and was teaching, somebody said, you don't have to prove you're smart. Everybody is smart. Stand out and be kind. And some of the best people I know and some of the best scholars I know are the people who go out of their way to be kind, which is something that's sorely lacking in a lot of industries right now. So all the people presenting in this conference are some of the kindest people in the world as well, from my knowledge.
SLY prof will wreck you, not you, Dan. Other people, like, it warms my heart, you know? But yes, we love kind people. I mean, it could not be me, but I appreciate those of you.
Yeah, right. Imus, world's biggest flex. Dan McLellan wrote my recommendation letter. Yeah. Accurate, though.
I am definitely kind to people that deserve it. If you don't, best wishes.
Yeah. It's not the word that springs to mind if you feel someone doesn't deserve kindness.
Yeah. Like, anyway, you know.
Talk to, ask.
You'll never have to ever encounter me.
Ask Jeffrey if you have funds for conferences as a master's student. They should provide you some kind of funding to travel, to go to conferences. So
I shake mouth for it. Just kidding. No, I will. We haven't even gotten. So because our semester starts so late in September, we haven't even pitched classes yet. Like, I've talked to him about what I will be taking, but we haven't actually selected like I haven't actually clicked like I'm doing this, sign up. It's just like, that's probably what we'll do whenever they send out that notification. I'm like, all right. Anywho, okay. Friends, near and far, my life, Candida's, I'm sorry, I keep mispronouncing. Whatever. Dan's life, whatever. Ask your questions. Now is the time. And I'm going to let them answer because they're the people that are smart here.
Yeah, Dr. Canada, like I brought up earlier, the big news in the realm of biblical scholarship is P5575. What we talked about it briefly earlier. What is your take on that? Can you give us a brief, like, for those who don't know, can you talk about it a little bit?
Yeah, so it's a newly published Oxyrhynchus fragment. So it was first excavated in the 19th century. It's
I
owned by the
promise this is exciting stuff, guys.
Yeah.
I promise this is
It
really.
was only just published last week, and I did get an advance look at it. I got to speak to the people who worked on it, the editors. It has an unusual recent history. It was sold to the owners of Hobby Lobby and then was brought back to Oxford when it was discovered that wasn't a legal sale. And so it was just published.
Sorry, that's all.
Every time.
Yeah, it's one of the reasons I'm interested in it. And it's a collection of sayings. It parallels some sayings in Matthew and Luke and the Gospel of Thomas. It doesn't use the word God. It uses Father, a little bit like Thomas does. All of the sayings that we have, but it's really short. It's 19 lines. It's tiny. All of the sayings that we have relate to things like the cares of this world, right? Consider the birds. They don't worry about what they're going to wear. That kind of, those kinds of sayings. Not Proverbs, like Matthew, Luke, that kind of stuff, right? And, but all different, all slightly different. It's been dated in the 2nd century, which is a huge deal. We have no 1st century fragments. This is really 2nd century. It's remarkable. And it's remarkable in as much as it tells us that nobody was super worried about the wording. This person was familiar with 3 other Gospels and was interested in them enough to repeat the same themes, the same phrasing, but wasn't worried about changing the words. You might say that's oral tradition, or you could just say, you could follow Robin Walsh and say, well, people like to write their own Gospels to show off their prowess. You could follow Matthew Lawson and say, people just don't worry about the words. That's a modern evangelical preoccupation. I think that I think it's fascinating. We'll have to see if the dating holds up, because I do know, having written a whole book about them, that the organization that was studying all of these fragments acquired by Hobby Lobby, that there's a lot of pressure on them to date things early. And so when you have more kind of so when you have more secular paleographers,
if you can date a manuscript from the 3rd century to the 2nd century, it's the difference between like $1 million to $1 billion.
Mm-hmm.
The price shoots up if you can convince a paleographer to date a manuscript to the 2nd century as opposed to the 3rd century. You're rich for the rest of your life. So there is definitely a lot of politics when it comes to dating the manuscripts.
I have made a whole series of videos about Hobby Lobby and their bullshit. It's a nightmare that they get to be involved in literally anything that has to do with ancient anything.
Well, when I used to attend Bible translation conferences, the Greens are funding probably most of the Bible translation initiatives out there, because many of them believe that once they get a Bible translation into every single language on earth, that will catalyze the second coming.
Oh, yeah.
And
all right,
so they dump millions and millions of dollars into translating the Bible into new vernacular languages every year. So they're in control of the whole Bible translation industry right now.
Someone in my comments said, "How did Hobby Lobby get into that?"
I can tell you.
Oh, please.
I know it, but I think you know it better. So, please.
Yeah, I kind of feel like I wrote the book.
No, yeah, you did. You absolutely did. Yeah, that's why I'm seeing the floor. How dare you?
Yeah. So basically, they already were in philanthropic work, and they had a model for the philanthropy, which was they would buy something, usually a building, that they would then donate to one of their evangelical Christian funds. But they had to hold on to it for a year, and the model was whatever they bought had to be worth 3 times as much a year later for the tax write-off.
Oh.
And so when this papyrus and Torah scroll collecting project was pitched to them, it was pitched to them as like, you think you can make 3 times as much money? You can make 1,000 times on these tax write-offs. All you need to do is to get some scholars to work on the papyri, to work on the Torah scrolls, and then donate them and think of the tax write-off. So that was how it started. Now they do buy things that they just kind of fall in love with. But there are a bunch of antiquities that they purchased that seem to serve, like they had so many Torah scrolls, thousands of Torah scrolls, and they would buy them. They were no longer in use. They were damaged. They would purchase them from Europe for $1,500, I was told, $2,500, bring them here and write them off for anywhere between $80K and $500,000.
Wow.
Like, I'm like, why are we paying taxes, you guys? Like, we should be doing this. Like,
it's just the scruples that stand in the way right now. So, yeah. Yes. To answer that question, yes, that is, well, I think it's tax fraud. I think there's a lot of investigating going on right now. So,
So, Professor Moss, how skeptical are you of the 2nd century dating of the manuscript?
So Ben Henry, who was the paleographer, I really respect him. He's at the University of Oxford. He has no ties to Museum of the Bible, and he seems to have no interest in dating texts early. So he was involved in the dating. I do trust him, but paleography is not a very secure form of dating.
Yeah,
it's the least secure. And let's see what Brett Nongri says, because he's the guy he's always like, you think it's 1st century, could be 3rd. You just want it to be 1st. We'll see what Orsini says. Those kinds of people who are skeptical of theologically motivated dating,
but
what will they say?
My ultimate question is like, so fucking what? Sorry, like, this would be a very exciting thing that occurs because it's new and exciting, but it means nothing when it comes to the sort of like veracity of the Christian faith, right? Because it's like several centuries post Jesus, which is like what we ultimately already have. So like not saying it's not an exciting thing, it definitely is an exciting thing, but does it really actually change sort of any of the historicity of like Jesus' existence or the things he did or who wrote the Gospels or any of that? Like, it doesn't seem to change any of that.
I would say it's a datum that gives us a little more help trying to establish how the texts kind of standardized and how they were transmitted and everything like that. And if anything, kind of complicates some of the efforts to try to push the stabilization of the New Testament back into the late 1st century, early 2nd century. But a lot of folks are going to see it as another notch mark they can put in their collection of how many manuscripts attest to the New Testament. So you can say, well, now it's 5,801 Greek New Testament
that y'all
manuscripts.
who copy the same story so many times, like that, not y'all, sorry, but just like generally, I don't get it. I don't get why somebody copying the story 5 times more.
The interesting thing about this manuscript is it seems to, correct me if I'm wrong, Professor Moss, it seems like to be a combination of like a little bit of Matthew, a little bit of Luke, and a little bit of the Gospel of Thomas, which if you take the manuscript and you compare it with any other manuscript that we have, it doesn't fit. It's like completely unique from anything that we have. So what this says is this may be a completely different gospel that was in circulation that nobody was previously aware of. Like, you even had some other scholars think that it was like, maybe this is a fragment of the Q document, but no, probably not. But it's different. It's something completely unique that we didn't have before. And if this was in circulation in the 2nd century, that's pretty impactful for the development of the early church.
Yeah, and I think it could be a gospel, but I'm going to go with, I think you're absolutely right, Captain Deadpool, and I would say I see that boozy Bible scholar who's actually the great Angela Parker, if you read her scholarship, she's a New Testament scholar. She said that copying the stories with significant differences is interesting, right? That is important. I mean, no, it doesn't get us to Jesus. Not all of us care about getting back to Jesus. Some of us just care about the history.
Yeah. Sure, yeah, absolutely.
And so for me, it's interesting. Like, if it's another gospel, that's huge, as Captain Deadpool says. But even if it's not, it is evidence that the Bible is not as stable as people think. Now, I realize there are going to be a bunch of people who are like, oh, no, it's evidence of an early no, but that's not what it is. And, I'm a historian, so I'm like, this is cool. Other people who do not care about the sequence and wording of the Gospels writing like this is just cool.
So absolutely, I think that like this fragment on its own is very cool. Like, period. As my younger sisters would say, the youths, period. But like, because of the sort of work that I do on this platform and that Dadpool does, and I think Dan does, and like you do, and whatever, like, people are expecting this to serve a purpose, and that purpose is either supporting the sort of gospel as historical narrative thing, or like not. And I know that is not the only way you can sort of view things, but it is interesting because we're all going to have to reckon with how we use this, for lack of a better term, right? Like, it's going to come up and we have to decide, like, how do we talk about this? How do we share this? How do we integrate this into the general corpus?
It shows just how, like, how many varying opinions there were when it comes to Jesus and the gospel and everything. This is just one more piece. Like, you have the Marcionites, the Ebionites, you have all these early Christian groups who believed a variety of different things, and now you have a brand new gospel. It's like there's a whole nother community that seems to think something completely different from anything we ever knew before. So it's like, it just adds to, like, this is so broad in the early church.
Well, we also have testimonia that are being circulated in the early church, which is where very popular texts, you pull quotes from very popular texts and they will get kind of lumped together. And so, for instance, a lot of people will argue that James's quotation, ostensibly of the Greek translation of Amos 9, 11, and 12 at the end of the Jerusalem Council in Acts 15, is pulling testimonia, where it's like, this is kind of like one passage over here in Amos, but also it resonates with some stuff going on in Jeremiah and Ezekiel, and might be pulling from a testimonium that collected some of these different quotations and, massaged the wording a little bit. And so that it could also be something. Candida, you are more of the expert on this than I am, so correct me if I'm wrong, but it also could be some manner of testimonium that was in circulation.
Hey, Andrew. Also, sorry, just before Candida hops in here, yes, we all love Dan. Benjamin, we all love Dan, yes. Anyway, please, continue.
Okay. Yeah. Little iffy sometimes.
Sometimes he's a smart ass, and then I love him more. But anyway, continue, please.
Yeah, I think the testimonia are important too, and we have evidence they existed, and people use them. Often when people refer to testimonia, they're doing it to try and fix an erroneous citation in the New Testament. Like a citation of a Hebrew Bible passage that is like a little off, and that's when they get invoked. I have to apologize. I called you Captain Deadpool, not Captain Dadpool, and I got an angry.
My real name is
the same.
So.
Okay.
You're British. That's fine.
But like, I'm a big Ryan Reynolds fan. I don't want to tell you. So
aren't we all?
But yeah.
Who amongst us is not a Ryan Reynolds fan? Raise your hand, and then get the fuck out of here. No.
So like, definitely that odd testimonia. There are lots of ideas and concepts out there. They get like invoked strategically by people to explain problems that they identify in the New Testament. I would say just because we have a text doesn't mean we have a community, and that actually should be more troubling to people. the fact that a lot of people who are, we're not talking about like heretics, whatever that might mean in the 2nd century before there is an orthodoxy, right? Lots of people are reading texts that now people say are heresy, but they're reading them and they're Orthodox Christians. In antiquity, like Valentinus, the leader of the Valentinians, not quite a Gnostic, but considered to be a heretic now, this close to being the Bishop of Rome. And you know what we call the Bishop of Rome now, right? So like, we're not really talking about, Marcion was, when he was handing out cash to the local presbyters in Rome, also quite beloved, right? So, there's a lot more fraternization and conversation between groups. And I think you would find a lot of people who are today, considered to be the pioneers of Orthodox Christianity shared a lot of views in common with other people who are now considered to be heretics.
Oh, I mean, you see all the time, people will be like, God's word never changes. And there are people that like vastly disagree with like the majority of historical church history. Like, and you're like, all right, cool. I guess. Seems weird to me, but that's fine. Like, people decide what they want to believe about.
It just show how everybody, all these different communities, they were trying to figure out what they believed. And you read like the writings of Paul, even he's like, I think maybe this, in like Galatians 1, Galatians 5. He's like, I think maybe this, I think maybe that. Like, Paul's not even certainly sure about what he believes himself. But that is the essence of the early church. Everybody was trying to figure out what they believed and what they were going to teach to the next generation. So this this newer gospel just kind of adds to that. I don't know if that made any sense.
Well, and you also have the institutional structure not really taking as firm shape until the 4th century, and that's when they finally all right, now let's finally iron out all the kinks and clean house, and and that certainly enabled the authorities to exercise a lot more oversight. And prior to that, there was a lot more.
Decisions were made under like cloak and dagger and the shadow of night. But once they gained power, they were able to do it like out in broad daylight and tell everybody, "Hey, here's what Jesus said." Now, deal with it.
So, Candida, question for you, real quick, and then we'll get back to you. Are you advocate for an early or a late date for the Muratorian fragment?
Ooh.
I tend to always
that's so good.
Lean late. It's certainly like really off on hummus, right? So there's that. So that feels like way later than the shepherd hummus. But I want to say late. I did see someone say something about Valentinus was definitely a Gnostic. And I will say most scholars I know who work on Gnosticism distinguish between Gnostics and Valentinians, even if they consider them all to be part of some kind of big group of Gnostics. And I would say even once you set a canon, let's be clear, you haven't policed how people read it. Like a text like the Gospel of John, very popular among so-called Gnostics. The Gospel of Mark, the passage where Jesus doesn't know the timing of the day of judgment. I mean, Hilary of Poitiers, who is considered to be a doctor of the church in the Roman Catholic Church to this day, was this close to being thrown out as a heretic because of the Christology he built up around that one verse. So, and the only reason people decided he wasn't a heretic was because someone forged a text to say that he retracted this idea. So someone in medieval Paris did that. So even once you establish a canon, you haven't established how people are reading that text. And
how very Foucault of you, you know?
Yes, I think Foucault would be in agreement,
So there's Claire Rothschild published a book 5 years ago on the Muratorian fragment, and I think she's convinced at least Lee Martin MacDonald who advocates for a late 4th century date now as well. So I was surprised by how much pushback I saw when I started promoting that late view for the Muratorian fragment.
So, I think that is fabulous work. That's a great
Real quick, I just want to provide some context for everybody who's watching. The Muratorian fragment is a fragment that was part of a Latin manuscript. The only listing that we have of the New Testament documents that mentions, or the earliest, not the only, the earliest mention of the Gospels of Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John come from Irenaeus in the mid-2nd century. The only possible exception is the Muratorian fragment. We don't know who wrote it. We don't know and there's a whole lot of debate about the dating to it. So there's this one fragment that may date the Gospels as being written, but a lot of scholars think no, not so much. Most scholars dated after Irenaeus. Hopefully that made sense.
Forgive all of my chaotic movement.
Yeah.
And so, I would suggest that the consensus is moving towards end of the 4th century, that it is much later. So,
but of course, apologists are going to cling to that early 2nd century dating of that text.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I just feel like apologists only exist for other Christians. So, like, any serious academic discussion, not that I'm an academic yet, but I will be. I'm just struggling to consider them because. Sorry.
Yeah, I struggle with that. That's a daily struggle for me too. I don't know.
Like, the number of people that are like, if you just read The Case for Christ, you would be convinced. My brother in Christ. Do you think Anyway, let's go ahead and ask questions on any of the lives, not just mine. Before everybody has to go, I think it's good to open it up.
Yeah, definitely. If y'all have any good questions,
that was racist. So that was just telling the truth. That was telling the truth.
We're influencers. That's what Jess and I are. These are actual fucking scholars working in the field. They get paid to talk about this. To ask them the real questions.
I don't know who I'm influencing.
Okay. Anyone read Thiesen's new book? Got it right here, and I am talking to Matt in 2 weeks on the podcast. So,
are you?
Yeah. So
that's exciting.
I be harassing Matt every day on Twitter.
I'm such a slow reader. I have so many books I need to catch up on. That's another one on my list.
Matt, if anybody runs into Matt, ask him how Tiffany Amber is doing, because the couple years ago at SBL, on his name tag he wrote "not related to Tiffany Amber" underneath his last name, and so I give him crap about that all the time. And then next month, I'll be having Andrew Whitehead on the podcast to talk about American idolatry. So very much.
Oh, that's so cool.
We are going to go through and talk about the passages that Christian nationalists pervert in order to try to defend Christian nationalism.
I absolutely need to get back on my bullshit, because whenever I ask someone to come talk to me, they do, but I simply don't ask them to do for whatever reason. Anyway, y'all should go subscribe to this podcast. Love it.
I think I saw that Kelsey joined the live, who does the cuneiform stuff. Candida, do you know Kelsey?
We recently became
Have you seen
friends, but
okay, yeah.
Can I get Kelsey's last name? Sorry, I just know a lot.
Howdy, Kelsey. They have the cuneiform in the picture and on their handle, but wonderful account, goes through Akkadian, talks about the different glyphs and things like that. So
y'all, sorry, some of you saw this on my Twitter. I have to tell you guys this. So I was, after after being harassed by men all day the other day, like publicly, privately, whatever, I went and I was like having some drinks at this like little place next to my house because I was just like, I can't do this anymore. And randomly, I bumped into an Assyriologist who was sitting at the table across from me, who was also teaching Akkadian at the University of Chicago, who was also a Calvinist.
Mm.
Oh yeah, I did see that.
4 hours. It was just like, like I was my whole entire self. He ended up with his head in his hands, talking about Islam, and I said, "Stay on topic." And he was like, "I have to go," and he left, and I was like, "All right, that's fine." I found out he lives in the unit directly fucking above me.
I saw that.
That is my life in a nutshell. Anyway, I just wanted to share that because I'm sure.
I can't wait to hear your stories from grad school once classes start.
Oh, I can't
think
either.
It's going to be amazing.
Like, I'm always a problem, and I kind of resigned myself to being a problem, but I thought that going to grad school, I might be less of a problem, but it turns out I'm going to be more of a problem. And that's a lot for me to me and my therapist are going to talk about this, you know? That's all. Sorry.
So Stephen sent me a message talking about the Muratorian fragment. He says, I assign my students the Muratorian fragment and have them focus on the Gospel of John part of it and ask them if it looks like the fragment, whether 2nd or 4th century, is evidence of Christian unanimity on John or deep insecurity. And all of my students, evangelical and not, start dissecting the heck out of it and having fun with how the writer keeps piling up one trope after another to authorize it, and then insist that it absolutely effing must be from God. So
that was a comment, or he texted you?
He texted me.
Oh, that's a long ass comment.
Text.
Okay, great. Love it.
Yeah, but
yeah,
it's that must be fun. It would be fun to be in a class like that where you're going after the Muratorian fragment.
Yeah, that would be.
I can't wait to be in classes.
Yeah.
Oh, God, grad school so bad.
Steph Candida says, Dr. Moss is here. The Other Christs is so well written. Great for lay persons and new scholars.
Oh, thank you. That was my dissertation book. So thank you very much. I wasn't sure if anyone read that book anymore. You know?
Isn't she the cutest? Everyone agree. Thank you. Correct.
I got a question. I don't know if y'all can see it or not. Thoughts on the Jesus Seminar? I don't know who that's directed to.
I saw that as well. And yeah. I don't know either.
But sure. Yeah, how do y'all... The Jesus Seminar is something that I learned about in Bible college. And when they were like, yeah, there's this team of like New Testament scholars, and they all say like 95% of the things that Jesus said, he probably didn't say. But they're all Christians. And I was like, in my fundamentalist Christian brain, I was like, what? I can't, doesn't compute. Can you explain it further?
So stressed.
Yeah, that didn't make... Yeah, what are your thoughts about the Jesus Seminar?
It's almost like they were historians, but yeah, continue.
Like they're brilliant people, like every one of them, as far as I can tell.
I think that initially everyone went. All the scholars were invited. They all went. They went to the Jesus Seminar. They voted. I mean, is it a little weird that the director of Starship Troopers was there voting too? But,
oh, I didn't even make that connection.
But
that's brilliant.
But that's what they were doing. I guess to me, I mean, like, I think it was cool. I think after a while, I'm like, oh, a lot of people dropped out and didn't go anymore. I think I'm not a historical Jesus person. Like, I'm just like, I don't think we can get there, you know, historically. And I'm not sure that taking like an aggregate vote would get us there.
This is or are you a mythicist? I know you're not.
I am not a mythicist.
I know.
I think
mythicism.
No, I should be mad.
Sorry, guys.
I honestly, I don't. Yeah, I don't find it compelling. That's my next way.
Sorry, I'm just being annoying. That's all. Continue.
But I also just think, like, when you think about the criteria used in historical Jesus research, one of them is the criterion of embarrassment. So if you take an element and if it's embarrassing in a particular historical context, then it's more likely to be true. And we're like, okay, sounds sensible. But what's the context in which you apply and you place that thing? Because that's critical to determining whether or not it's embarrassing or improbable. And those kinds of essential questions weren't asked and answered. It feels to me they're just like, this seems improbable. So there were a lot of things that were kind of, there were a lot of assumptions that were never clearly named. I think it was great at the beginning. And maybe it's that I've abandoned this quest for the historical Jesus. But for me, I've been invited to go participate, and I just haven't yet felt compelled to do so.
Wait, you were invited to participate in the Jesus seminar?
Not the initial ones, but the West Star Institute, which ran it, still exists. And I've been invited to participate in what they do now, which is different. But like, I'm not that old. Like, if I was so old I could have participated in the Jesus seminars, the initial ones, then like I should have some like skincare branding right now. Like 1,000%. Which I will take, by the way, if there happens to be any skincare representatives in the room.
That's so cool, though. Yeah, the Jesus seminar, they kind of just dissipated over time, didn't they?
Right, it just kind of like collapsed. People lost interest in the red, gray, black, and pink ball.
Well, we're kind of like moving into fourth wave historical Jesus.
Yeah, they don't do that at all.
So,
But I think to the general public, that's still the compelling question, right? What did Jesus do? So the whole like, well, this is how it was remembered. People are like, fundamentally, what happened? And I know this because like whenever I'm involved in making documentaries, I always try to pitch something like different and new. And they're still always like, but did Jesus do that? They just want to make the same show over and over again.
Fair.
Yeah.
Personally, like I care in the sense where it's like, yeah, if there could be some actual demonstrable proof of something supernatural, yeah, I would love that. But by virtue of being supernatural, it is not demonstrable. So like the fact that we're still trying to like figure this out is sort of a pissing war for me. Like it doesn't matter. If you're going to believe Jesus is the Son of God, you're going to believe that, regardless of whether somebody can provide some like historical evidence that Jesus did X, Y, or Z. Like, supernatural things are not provable.
Here's a good question. I think both of you would be good for answering. Do y'all think Jesus really said something like, "Before Abraham was, I am"? Or no?
Sorry. The resurrection is the best explanation of historical data. I have to go. Don't answer this question. I'm done.
I think the John's "I am" rhetoric fits rather conveniently into the literary construction there, and I don't see any reason to think that goes all the way back to a historical Jesus. But again, that's a lot of guesswork. We don't really have much on which we can gain any purchase in trying to reconstruct what was going on with a historical Jesus. But I will always defer to Candida's expertise when it comes to anything Jesus-y.
Yes, I'm sorry. My mouth moves a lot faster than it should. Please continue.
No, it's, I want to say if you're interested in like the I am things, go read Angela Parker's work on the Samaritan woman. I'm with Dan though. I just don't see the data. The Gospel of John is at best late 1st century. If not, I think more probably maybe early 2nd century. It's a beautifully written piece. If you like philosophy, this is probably the gospel for you. I don't see any evidence of that saying in the other earlier gospels or in Paul. It's very poetic.
I think so. Can we briefly discuss why the general scholarly consensus is that the Gospel of John was written later and in a different genre than the rest of the Gospels? because I actually think that's kind of important. Maybe.
I could talk about this for a minute, but I will let y'all.
No, I want to hear what you have to say.
Oh, don't! Oh my God!
I'm y'all, like, from what I have read about the Gospel of John, I am convinced that it is very much like a more Gnostic sort of version of the Gospels. But I'm not the scholar here, so
It's much more theologically developed. It also drives harder into like Jewish tradition that the other Gospels don't. So, for example, the accounts of the burial and empty tomb of Jesus. As the Gospels go along, they get a little bit more detailed. When you get to John, Jesus isn't just buried in a tomb in John. He's buried in a tomb that had never been used before. That's what it says. Because that's how it worked in ancient Jewish tradition. You had communal tombs that were used over and over and over again. A body was placed in there to decompose. After a year, the remains were collected and placed in an ossuary for a secondary burial, and they were used over and over and over again. Jesus' tomb was in a garden, and it had never been used before.
also
Right.
someone just said John has no Gnostic characteristics.
I don't think John was Gnostic. I think Gnosticism came a little bit later than John, but certainly there are like certain like the ideas about the
absolutely Gnostic.
Yeah. And then there's so much. I'll say theologically, John's gospel is much more developed than any of their gospels, and the Greek as well is more developed than the other gospels. So yeah, that's just a couple of quick reasons why it's dated later than the others. Hope that made sense. I don't know. I didn't have time to prep for that question.
No one did. I'm just live asking questions, that's all. Wait, I'm so sorry. Someone just said not to retread, but any specific thoughts on Richard Carrier's work? I simply have to go.
Don't waste your time. It's absolute garbage. Throw it in the fire, burn it. Yeah. So I have a bookshelf above my monitor right here. Right. These are all like my favorite books. Carrier's book is way back there. Because I don't give a shit about it. I hate it.
Trash? Sorry, because
it's way behind me. Don't read his book. His scholarship is garbage. It's not worth your time.
I'm so sorry. Please, scholars.
Just
please.
gonna be honest with you. That has nothing to do with him being a garbage human being, by the way. Which, but
like his scholarship is not.
His scholarship is equally as garbage.
You can cite me on that. I don't care. I'm not saying that either of the scholars in the chat need to agree. I'm just saying it is what it is. In any event, Dan, sorry, Dr. McLellan, Dr. Moss, what are your thoughts on Richard Carrier and the Bayesian?
Well, I don't know anything
Bayes
about
theorem. Oh God.
Yeah, I don't know anything about that. However,
It's a lot. It's nothing.
My sister is the department head for the math and stats department at Metropolitan State University. So she's the best mathematician I have ever met in my life. And so I took some of that to her and was like, and she said, it's basically you get what you plug into it. And you can plug
quick because this is
presuppositions into it, and so that you get out the results that you want. She's like, people do this all the time. Yep. This is not real math.
With statistics is like you can do whatever you want with it.
Let me say something really quick. I had a formal debate with a Christian who used Bayes' theorem as an argument for the resurrection. I don't know anything about Bayes' theorem. And I told him that in my rebuttal. I was like, I don't know anything about Bayes theory. What I do know
Neither does he.
is Richard Carrier uses Bayes theorem to say that Jesus never existed in the first place. So
Richard Carrier also does not know about Bayes' theorem. I'm so sorry. Like, he does not know the argument he made. I read his book. It's shit. I studied statistics. Like, I'm not a PhD in it, but just on the very basic premises, it's shit.
You know enough to know that it's bullshit.
That's all. Anyway, I'm gonna shut up now. Thanks.
Somebody, I just saw a question go by. Somebody asked, they're just becoming aware of all this scholarship because they saw some of my videos, and they asked what a good introductory book would be. John Barton's book, A History of the Bible, is phenomenal. It is not as accessible as a Bart Ehrman book. John is Oxford professor, very English, so he writes at a slightly higher level. But in terms of a wonderful framing of the history of the Bible and understanding where it's coming from and how it's been used historically, I don't think you can do much better. So if you're looking for a book to kind of dive into the world of biblical scholarship, I would highly recommend that one.
Which of the Gospels are the most, quote unquote, historically accurate, and how do we know? Take it away, beloveds. I have thoughts, but y'all are the professionals, you know what I mean?
Yeah, so historically accurate. So if you wanted to try and find out what happened, presumably you would go to your earliest sources, right? Closer to the date. That does make sense. It's the reason people want early fragments of manuscripts. Closer you can get to the events, the more trustworthy the account. And our earliest gospel would be the Gospel of Mark, which happens to be my favorite. So that works well. But what I would say about Mark is, while it is our earliest, it is still a work of literature written with interests, with theological interests, with political interests. It is produced sometime after the events. It is written in a language that Jesus did not speak. And
how do we know this? How do we know that?
Well, it's written in Greek, so that's pretty clear.
Right.
How do we know it's written later?
That person, listen, I'm not arguing with you. I just want people to like get this. How do we know that somebody, I guess one of Jesus' disciples, didn't like go off and like potentially learn Greek and write this like sophisticated account of like what you saw? Or why do we think that is not the case?
Because that wasn't really a thing. And even like you couldn't go to school to learn another language when you were an adult. You could hire a tutor in the ancient world, but it was very, very expensive to do that. That's my understanding anyway. So the likelihood... Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, this kind of literary bilingualism would be unusual when it comes to mythology of the Gospel of Mark. Firstly, whoever Mark is, that's not the name of one of the followers of Jesus. The mythology of Mark says that Mark was a hermeneutes, that's a translator or an interpreter for Peter, the apostle. I don't know if that's true. That tradition is 2nd century. I think it's someone putting together different traditions and trying to supply a kind of apostolic lineage for this gospel.
Well, that's Papias, and he also says it's a sayings gospel as well.
Yes, he does.
Which is also
right.
What?
So it's interesting because basically what Papias is implying is that Peter used the secretary. And that the reason, and that actually is sort of supposed to credentialize this text. The reason we know kind of when it's written is that Mark 13 refers to events that sound like the destruction of Jerusalem. And unless you think that this happened, that these are all predictions, which you might think, that's just not really what historians do, then you would say, okay, so it's written after this point in time. We have people using it. We have Matthew and Luke using it verbatim. We have people referring to it from fairly early in the 2nd century. None of this means that it's historically accurate as pertains to the life and events that we're interested in.
Pliny the Elder, but yeah, continue.
You said Pliny the Elder?
No, sorry, I was answering someone in the chat, not you.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then in terms of like when Christians talk about how the apostles might have been able to write things down or preach in other languages, what they say is it was the Holy Spirit. That the Holy Spirit is the reason why they sound so articulate. Like if you read Acts of the Apostles, you would have thought that these fishermen had like received a very lofty rhetorical education at some point. And the explanation for that is the Holy Spirit. And if you're on board with that, okay.
Well, Revelation becomes difficult to explain if you're on board with that.
That person, well, I shouldn't. That person's
To the Bible.
spelling.
Get into it, you know?
Their grammar, they, you know, it's similar to the kind of grammatical mistakes you find in inscriptions in Asia Minor.
What? That's crazy.
Burn. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I hate to do this, but I have to go. So family calls and I must answer. So thank you so much for your time, everybody. I appreciate the invitation to come join you all, and it's great to see you and the surprise guest, Captain Dadpool, and Stephen, if you're still out there. We've been kind of going back and forth, messaging each other. We will do this kind of thing again.
We can do it because like we all want you here.
Yeah, so if you don't follow
SLY, you've been hogging up the airspace this whole time. So,
SLY Prof, go follow him so we can have him join, literally.
Yes.
But thank you, Dan. Sorry.
Thank you.
I'm always a nightmare. What else can I say?
No, it's okay. I look forward to hearing about how school goes, what classes you sign up for, and
I've already signed up for them.
Starts, so.
Well, like at least according to Jeffrey Stackert. Like I haven't signed up officially, but given that we've spoken about my classes, I know what they are.
All right, cool. Well, I look forward to hearing how things go. Hope everybody has a wonderful evening, and everyone in the comments. David. Did David Burnett just show up? Sorry, I'm taking off right now, David. So hope everybody has a wonderful evening.
If y'all want to stay, I'm happy to stay and chat. But if you don't want to go, that's fine. Dan,
I usually go to bed like an hour and a half ago. I know. I'm old. I get up really early. I don't know what to tell you, but I would love to do this again. And I'm like, I'm so glad to like meet everyone in person, and thank you everyone for coming.
So my real life friend Charles Shipman just said Dan is the best, and I find that like very disrespectful because I know him.
Somebody has been constantly trying to get us to mention Anne Hathaway. So there you have your evidence that this is an actual live and not something that we recorded. And that is
I have met Anne Hathaway. I can tell that story.
All right, well.
You can go down.
You have to live.
I want to hear the story.
If you don't, okay. It starts with her being in an apartment that overlooks Central Park. That's where she lives. Okay, go. Bye, Candida.
Bye.
We love you. Bye. We'll see you next time.
Okay, so as I mentioned before, like I do some work for CBS News on like papal news commentary. And when Pope Francis visited the US in 2015, I was the papal news correspondent. I was there all day, every day for 11 days. I was there with a Catholic priest, a more conservative Catholic priest. And one day we're in the green room for CBS This Morning, and there's Anne Hathaway. And part of the story is going to be a burn on this Catholic priest. And he was like, who's that woman there? And I'm like, who's in the green room before we go into the green room? And I'm like, that's Anne Hathaway. He's like, oh. And he's like, who is she? I was like, she's an actress. She's kind of famous. She was just in this movie, Les Miserables. And he's like, oh, okay. And then we go in and we sit down, and he sits next to her, which already feels like not enough personal space for Anne Hathaway. And then he asks her for her autograph and claims that he really loved her in Les Mis. And I'm like, pathological liar. Anyway, so she's really nice, by the way. Any of you who heard the rumors that she's not really nice, so she like signs the thing for him, and I'm just watching him like lie at her in pursuit of like an autograph, and I'm like, hi. She's very nice. I can't really say that we like got to know each other or we're gonna like go to the spa or something. But I did meet her. She is just as beautiful as you would think.
What's hilarious about this conversation is I couldn't sleep last night, so I watched The Dark Knight Rises, and which has Anne Hathaway as Catwoman, and now here we are talking about her, and I'm like, what? My FBI agent is like on his game today.
I have pity for my FBI agent because I'm so fucking boring. Hey, FBI, do you want to talk about the fucking Gospels?
I can give them all this
detail. All right, great, love it. Let's do it. No.
Yes, Joshua, you're right. That was a first impression. I met her for like all of a minute and a half. Someone was like, "Well, I've heard some stories." I do have to go to bed. Like, even though I'm now very hopped up on adrenaline, this is not good. You know,
so great.
But it has been so great to do this with you guys. I hope we can do it again soon. And thank you everyone for coming. I really, really appreciate it. It makes me feel very loved and validated.
I have had way too much, but yes, like
thank you.
Do it.
I might have like more to drink at that point, but I'm sorry because, you know.
Okay, next time I will definitely talk about Ignatius of Antioch because someone in my comments is like, Ignatius of Antioch, and I love that guy. So we'll talk next time.
Love it. All right,
bye everyone.
Y'all, if anyone wants to stay, I think Dadpool and I could stay for a little bit. I don't know. Yeah. So if anybody wants to talk, that's fine. Otherwise, I'm just gonna go fall asleep. But yeah.
Thanks again, by the way, Jess, for inviting me to that.
I'm so happy.
I haven't gotten to talk to Candida Moss. Fuck. I haven't gotten to talk to Candida Moss yet, and so that was really cool.
I'm happy to provide that. She's amazing. I love her. And I am like, it doesn't even, like, I can't even process in my brain that she considers me a friend. I
It's weird being a TikTok influencer and having all these scholars, like, connections.
I don't consider myself an influencer. Like, I don't consider myself anything except for,
I hate that word. I just don't know what other word to use. But I have, like, scholars. I just call on the phone ring, like, hey, I have a question about this Hebrew text. Can you help me out? Oh, yeah. And that's just, it's bananas to me.
Correct. It's fucking
absolutely
wild.
bananas.
I don't get it. The fact that, like, no, I don't get it. It's fucking wild. I don't have any words or reason, and the fact that I just like showed up on TikTok one day and then a bunch of like scholars were like, "Yes, you matter" for some reason, and I was like,
imposter syndrome to the max.
Okay, I don't believe.
Hold on to your butts.